What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Crypto Coffee channel. I've got a very special guest. He's got probably double my subscriber count. He's a crypto OG, and he is joining the Hexagon Space Force. He's joining the PulseChain Alliance. Friend of PulseChain for a long time now. I'm calling him a new OG, but he's been here for a while, and he's got plans, guys. He's got big plans for the PulseChain ecosystem. You probably know Donovan Jolly, otherwise known as DIY Investing. 85K subs on YouTube, something like 50K subs on Twitter or X. He's a big deal, and he's well connected in the traditional sphere as well. So, sir, thank you for coming on. And you're one of the examples of kind of the gates coming down. I feel like I was watching your Corey Costa stream. I was watching some of your old content. You had a great segment about the cycle theory and how we might be aligning more with 2012 or whatever, not 2017. Right. But you also had some cool stuff to say with Corey. I didn't realize how long you'd been in crypto. But do you want to just introduce yourself for people that don't know you?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you once again for having me on. I really appreciate it. My name's Donovan. I've been in crypto for 8 years now. I got into crypto in early 2016 because of Bitcoin. And when I learned about Bitcoin, I was like at a point in my life where I just wanted to, figure out what that next thing was. I just dropped out of high school. I just got out of like juvenile detention. I turned 18 when I was in juvenile detention. And so I got out like 2 months later. And then after that point was really where I met this friend and he showed me Bitcoin. And then when he showed me Bitcoin, I had just learned about the Federal Reserve. So then it was like, oh, wow, this is a way that we can actually like kind of be our own bank and do our own thing with our money. So that was my introduction into crypto. 2017 happened. I was early to Ethereum. I was early to a number of those things. I didn't end up capitalizing on it just because I didn't know what I was doing. And so 2018, that was really where I started to try and, pay for courses, pay for people to teach me what I'm doing. And then that was where I found Bob Lucas. And then that was where I understood 4-year cycles, how to understand the timeframes in cycles. And it was really that point that I felt like I took like the next level inside of understanding the way the markets move. And so 2018, in the middle of the bear market, I started my YouTube channel. And it was in 2020 that it kind of started taking off, right before the whole market kind of broke out. And so I've been just kind of here the whole time, learning, investing, teaching people how to invest, working on different projects, advising different projects and things like that. And, now I'm over here in PulseChain, sacrificed for PulseChain a couple years ago. So that was my introduction into this ecosystem. Already knew about Richard Hart, already knew about Hex and all of that early on. It's just that I missed out because I didn't have any money at the time. And so, watching the whole ecosystem unfold like it has, I see a lot of value inside of PulseChain. And that's kind of why I've started to pivot more towards, talking a lot and focusing more over here, because I think there's a big opportunity.
Yeah, it's too hard to ignore right now, right? All the on-chain metrics are pointing, in my opinion, not financial advice, but we're pointing to the fact that we should be a lot higher than we are right now. And when we're primed to pump, and when the floodgates open, when retail really gets involved, we've got the loudest megaphone. We've got experienced guys like yourself, dude. I think I actually heard about you way back in the day from that Tika Tuwari video that you made. Because I was going through the same learning process, because we started around the same time, 2015. You started 2016. Yeah. And I came across all these, teachers and gurus, and I was trying to figure out who's the fake guru, who's legit. And that Tika guy came up, and I'm like, why is this guy charging so much fucking money for 5 coin picks? And then you just gave it all away.
Yeah, honestly, I was a little bit nervous about doing that. I think that's still the biggest video I ever had on my channel, now that I think about it. And it was like BitBoy made the video first. And so then I was like, he's going to do it. He's bigger than me. So if anybody's going to get sued, it's probably him. So then I just went with it. And, nice. It was definitely worth it, because that was kind of like a huge boost to my channel in the early portion, was making that top 5 Tika Tori coin video and showing everybody about that, even though everything had already pumped way after the fact. Like people.
Yeah, I didn't end up buying any of them because I saw them and I was like, really? These are the 5 picks? I was like, but thank you for saving me, thousands of dollars of paying for his thing,
Yeah, right. Well, he just had the most perfect marketing pitch I'd ever seen. Yeah. Like, for anybody doing that for crypto, nobody had really seen it, with him running perfect marketing ads and campaigns. So, shout out to him for that. But yeah, they didn't do good because I bought them.
Yeah. I mean, by the time I found out about them, they had already had their pump, like you said. But Yeah, you got that troublemaker gene, and that kind of goes with a lot of us in crypto, right? I remember you saying what you were just saying that you dropped out of high school and juvie and stuff like that kind of resonates with all of us here. We all want to resist authority. I think that's something common that people in crypto have is a distrust for the Federal Reserve. You know, we're being scammed on a grand scale here, and crypto's the way out. I remember you saying too that you kind of vibe with the more everyday layperson, which I appreciate because I think you mentioned on Corey's stream you grew up on a farm and stuff like that. And you know, we're all just kind of regular people at the end of the day that are taking matters into our own hands to get our financial sovereignty back. And that's one thing we all have in common, right? The gains are nice, but you don't have the gains and the freedom go hand in hand, right?
Yep.
Like we can now do whatever we want. I'm sure after having been in crypto for 8 years, right, we're both pretty financially free at this point. It's a matter of time. You know, a lot of the guys that haven't quite made it yet, right, just hang in there, you know, holding long term, double down on your conviction, dollar cost average. We're all going to make it, but you can't fumble the bag as well, right?
Yeah, that's well said. Honestly, like I see so much opportunity inside of this ecosystem and seeing a lot of the average everyday people, like I mean, I just interact with those people every single day. And like, even with money, as much money as I've had at the cycle tops versus what I have now and all in between, I've never really changed very much. Like I still wear a lot, like both of these things I got in 2017 and I think my grandma bought me this. So it's like, most of the stuff I wear is just like what I've just carried on forever. Like I've got holes in my clothes and like I'll finally throw those away. And it's like, I just don't care about material things very much because my big focus has always been just like having money that I can help my family with. You know, that was like when I was broke and I didn't have money in 2018 when the market started crashing. I remember just like praying and then only wanting money just to help my family because I felt like that was the most important thing. I felt like something was going to happen. I was really just super anxiety ridden at that time. So I think I was mainly like projecting that on what was going on. But at the same time, that was always my reason for what I wanted to do with crypto, like be able to help myself, help my family, help my friends, help people around me, help people that just follow me with my YouTube channel, because there really isn't a better way of doing it for the average person. I dropped out of high school. Like, I don't know how to do a lot of math. I rely on, you know, every other person that's smarter than me to like help get to where I'm at. And so I think that the value is the community. And there's really no better value inside of a community than what we see with Hex and PulseChain. So me gravitating over here and making this content, I feel like the people you're interacting with are a lot more real. It's like your common everyday people. And there's some of the people here that have been around that are super wealthy and all of that. But even those people I've interacted with, they don't come off as that way. Like they don't try and like make you think that they're super wealthy or try and like show themselves as super wealthy. Like they just are respectful, humble people. And I found that in this community specifically, you see a lot of that.
Yeah, yeah. You know, it's when you come out from the other side of that deep, dark anxiety for the first cycle, right? That happened to all of us. Happened to me too. You really question your whole belief of like, did I just waste the last 4 years of my life believing in a wild goose chase? And is this all just bullshit? Like, was everybody right? But then you ask yourself, right? Like, try to envision the future and try to envision a future where crypto is not bigger than it is today. It's just the natural progression of technology. I mean, kids these days, they're gaming constantly. They're living in the metaverse. NFTs are second nature to them. We're all going to be transacting digitally, and the PulseChain is kind of like a digital nation, I like to say. And we all play our parts. We all have our strengths and our weaknesses, and everyone kind of goes. You know, it doesn't really matter if you're not the best at math, right? Because you're good at making videos. You got 90K subs, right? Like we kind of gravitate, and this ecosystem is really cool because we can all find a place to show off our strengths, right? And really add something in a different way.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's the beauty of the community over here is the fact like they've had to basically build an alternative for everything. Like all of the other stuff in the normal communities usually gets funded by the project itself or the foundation like governing the project. One of those things that doesn't happen over here. So everything that's been built is from the community. And I see that that's the real value of this community. The fact that they've been able to do all of that. They've already proven that they believe enough to hold all of this stuff, to stake stuff like Hex long-term. But then, you know, because they're so invested into the long-term of all of these, they have basically taken that same initiative inside of the layer one with PulseChain. So that was what I started seeing was how diehard people were. And I knew how diehard they were from Hex all the way in the beginning. Because I remember I made a tweet one time And I don't even remember what the heck I did, but I said something negative about them. And the whole storm came flooding in. And I could not even believe how many people there were supporting it. And that was my first introduction of like, this is a super unique place, but it kind of scared me because of how mean everybody was. So I like, muted everything and ran away for a second. But, that same people, the same group of people are still here today, but then they've continued to build because now there's a way for them to build. They have their own layer one. They can now create their new, whatever it is. There's so many different places where value can be added in the PulseChain ecosystem, because when we're talking about Solana and Arbitrum and Optimism and, Ethereum, all of these other chains where you see a lot of people building on, you have an oversaturation of the same products over and over and over. And then most of the time, it's just people trying to make money off of each other. And so you don't really know where to come in and how to find value, where your place is. Whereas I feel with PulseChain, it's easy because there's not a huge amount of stuff over here, but there's going to be a lot of growth that takes place. And that's the real opportunity, is being early to the ecosystems. I was early to Optimism and Arbitrum and Solana and Metis and, all of these different chains. And I see that same opportunity, but, it's a unique opportunity with PulseChain because I've never seen quite the same community attached to something that's already so supportive. All of that, even in the other communities looking at Arbitrum, they're not as engaged as what we see over here. And I think that that's going to be the unique, key aspect for why the PulseChain and ecosystem really just does well as a whole, the whole cycle.
Absolutely. Yeah. What you said about we don't do things the traditional way, but you've got that pattern recognition down from your previous success of the other L1s and just being early to things. And guys listening, right, you want to catch the trend early and invest when it's not popular, which I would still say is right now. I mean, yes, we've got a little bit of confirmation bias. Thank God we're back at the SAC rates. We know it's not going to die and go anywhere. But we don't have that VC funding, because when you look at a lot of the projects on other chains, right, they're pre-allocated. They're like A16Z and Andreessen Horowitz is funding all of it, like on Solana at least. And you got to question, like, are you really early to some of those things, or are you just buying the bags of the insiders? So I think it's more of a fair playing field here, which ties into what you're building, which we're going to get into very soon. But just want to give you also props for the whole changing your mind thing and just admitting that. Like, you'd be surprised how hard it is for people to admit that they might have been wrong or change their mind. But I totally get where you're coming from, in the sense of like, we are like a hive that just swarms around, because we got so much shit from everyone else that we tried to attack, and we were fighting fire with fire back in the day. So just a word of advice for people out there, you do catch more flies with honey than vinegar. But it is fun to dunk on the haters as well. And if they are giving you, like I like to say, just don't throw the first punch, right?
Yeah.
Like, but if somebody
that's what I did. So, I mean, it was warranted.
It's all good, and the fact that you're still here though, right? And that just says something about, I guess, your character and your ability to think and be fluid in your thoughts. So cool, man. But yeah, for people that don't know, Donovan has got a launch pad. For people that don't know what a launch pad is, why don't you try to explain that in just simple terms?
Yeah, so basically a launch pad is just a way for, basically you provide like the network, the marketing, the initial liquidity. You might have people that have really good ideas that maybe don't have the ability to get them shown to a greater audience, or don't have the liquidity to be able to not only build their product protocol, but then also have the liquidity to be able to trade the token. So a launchpad basically connects one of those missing parts. So generally the building team will come and submit an application. And then whenever, they find a project they really like, then they'll take them on, provide the marketing, provide the liquidity, help them launch the token. And oftentimes these tokens end up performing really, really well. I worked with Ferrum Networks in the last cycle, and we're actually the chief marketing officer of Ferrum Networks is working on Pulse Launch now as well. So he was the person that he was one of the people that really cemented like the standard for how launch pads work, where they get a whole group of influencers. Let me mute my notifications real quick.
No problem.
But they get a group of influencers, and then they basically just go ahead and, funnel them to their entire network. Once their network goes through, once their network sees everything, they can kind of shill them to each other and help get the word out in a way where, they see the value, they come onto the project because they want to work with these projects early on, where they're like I said, there's a lot of holes inside of PulseChain. So in the holes that we see, it's mainly centered around the fact that there's a new ecosystem. It's a brand new layer one. There's almost nobody necessarily building on it. There's not a huge amount of liquidity for a lot of these big players to move over here. And so because of that, what we end up seeing is people are kind of, staying away. And I think people are staying away because they also had the issues with, Richard Hart doing his marketing tactics, how he led things in the last cycle. And so going into this cycle, with having this launchpad as an ecosystem where you can streamline new adoption, where you can have new projects that are building on Optimism and Arbitrum and Solana and all of these other ecosystems, but they don't necessarily get the opportunity to actually, they have too much, oversaturation. That's the big issue. We don't have hardly any saturation over here, yet there's all these good builders in these other communities that want a new opportunity. They're looking for, what is that next ecosystem that I can really get behind? And so that's really the power of having him, Dom from Ferrum Networks, is he has that entire network. He has all of those groups from Solana, from Arbitrum, from Metis, from all of these different communities. And he's able to bring them over here and then bring all of that new value. So there's going to be a lot of new eyeballs coming into the ecosystem, seeing all of the new projects. Chances are they're going to be coming to our incubations first, because we're going to be basically providing the platform to launch these projects. So when we see all of these different issues inside of PulseChain, ways that we can add value, ways that people that have already created value on these other chains, we can pretty much plug them into this equation and then add all of this value into the PulseChain ecosystem. So not only are we bringing marketing between all of the other, crypto communities, but then we're also working with a multi-million-dollar marketing agency on top of all of that. So that's going to connect us into the normal world and the crypto world, and then bring all of that ultimately to PulseChain as a whole.
Yeah, because I took a look at some of your partnerships, and so I'm assuming the normie world is going to be Sensei and those guys, right?
Yeah.
And these guys, I mean, for people that don't know, just go to the website. It's pulselaunch.xyz. Look, I'm not saying whether or not to invest in this. All right. I have no stake in this right now. Full disclosure. I'm not taking coins under the table and doing any of that stuff. But we're just here to talk about an idea that I think can, like Donovan's saying, bridge a lot of gaps, different networks, and into the normie sphere as well. So you've got Sensei Partners, which are, a huge kind of regular marketing firm that spans all sectors. I think I don't know. I saw that they invested in Stranger Things, and they've made a lot of like pop culture things very popular. And so they, from the looks of it, they sound like they know what they're doing, judging by their track record. And then you've got the altcoin chief, which you've referred to as Ferrum Network. The altcoin chief has got a lot of connections within different crypto communities. And, long story short, guys, launchpads are places where new projects can get incubated. They provide you liquidity, marketing. They get you off the ground. They launch you, right? That's why they're called launchpads. Binance Smart Chain has a launchpad. Solana, all these major chains have a primary launchpad. Some of them even have 2 or 3. PulseChain doesn't have one yet. So you're taking the reins on this. I mean, somebody was bound to. I'm honestly surprised it didn't happen earlier.
Yeah, true.
Glad that it's you guys. We did have one back in the day called PulsePad. But I think that rugged, or they just launched way too early as well. They launched like before PulseChain even launched, and they were on the Ethereum chain, and like so we've had some scam launch pads, but this one I believe is actually legit, and I believe it's going to be a net positive just with all the connections both in and out of crypto.
Yeah, thank you very much for saying that. Yeah, honestly, that's the thing, is a lot of these launch pads, we've watched how they were created, because I was with Ferrum Networks from early on. I helped with a lot of their marketing for different projects. They would just bring me all these projects. If I found one I really believed in and thought was valuable, then I'd talk about it. And so with their KOL groups, they have all of these different groups across these communities. So Ferrum Networks kind of paved the way to, how to create a launch pad, how to actually market towards them, how to make them sustainable long-term so people actually believe in them. And, with bringing on Dom from Ferrum Networks, he's going to be basically that huge, link towards bringing in these other communities. And that's the value that we see, is how much we need to bring more liquidity over here. And then how there's also a lot of places where a new project can come over here and build. Whereas, like you said, there might be 3, 4, 5 different projects on ETH doing the same thing. There's no launch pads over here. And that's the real value is, all these launch pads that have launched, I mean, technically it's not the first one by any means. they just don't know what they're doing, basically. Like they've launched your typical route where they do all of this private funding, they do all these private raises with venture capitalists, and then they do a pre-sale. And if you look into the details of the tokenomics with how these projects generally launch, you're going to see that about 20% goes to the team, 30% goes to the influencers, another 20% goes to VCs. And it's like, by the time you get to the public sell, it's like 2.5%, 5% of the token supply is just there to pump and dump on the community. So there honestly have been a lot of predatory type setups. The launch pads currently on PulseChain are just, obsolete. There's no liquidity. They have no marketing. They don't even know how a launch pad works. So we don't even consider them competition at this point, because to run a launch pad effectively, it takes so much into it. There's so much you have to know prior to having one. And then on top of all of that, to actually have people that, to create projects that are valuable, if you don't have the network to be able to communicate with these communities, to communicate with these builders, you just aren't going to have valuable projects launching. And so why would anybody want to invest into a launch pad that you can't even trade without, 20% slippage? And then they obviously don't even have enough money to launch a project. So it just doesn't really make sense to me.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, it's clear that you've been around the block a few times with this, and you know what you're talking about. At least to me, I mean, we've talked a little bit offline, but yeah, people should know, DIY investing. That's Donovan's channel. He's been around for a long time. I'm sure you've seen some stuff. I'm sure you've got the same PTSD as I do, being in crypto this long. But yeah, guys, look, people probably know my investing thesis. I am very biased towards just the core coins only. Hex, PulseChain, PulseX. I want these to pump. I hold probably 95% or more of my total stack in these three coins. But I do have to admit that there's other communities and untapped potential. And then, yeah, in a perfect utopia, yes, it would just be a one-way diode. Everybody would just come into PulseChain from every other place and they would never leave. In reality, guys, it's more, chaotic than that. There's people coming and going. But I think there's a lot more of a sink for people to come into PulseChain rather than go out of PulseChain and explore other things. And what I'm really interested in is like the communities that you are already a part of. Neo Tokyo is a huge one with Alex Becker and the NFT community over there, gaming, right? Crypto Punks, the OG NFT communities. I know you're big into Arbitrum, Metis. You're a fan of that layer 2 narrative.
Yep.
These are things that have captured other people's attention that can be brought onto PulseChain and capture some of that economic energy. In addition to just, whatever Sensei partners can do, we will see about that. But look, in full disclosure, right? People are going to watch this video and be like, he's telling everyone to go buy PulsePad. No, I'm not. You need to think for yourself. You need to get over that. And just because you hear another coin logo doesn't mean new shiny thing bad. I'm not telling people to go invest in it either. It's totally up to you, right? It's totally, your decision at the end of the day. I might not even put any money in this launchpad, to be totally fair with you. I personally, I'm kind of overextended, and I feel like I've got enough altcoins and I'm good. I might put a little money. Who knows, right? We'll see when it launches. But I just want to stress the overall point that I believe it's a net positive what you're doing, because you're tapping untapped pockets of the ecosystem, and you're going, you're joining people that would not have otherwise been joined. You're giving us exposure and legitimacy, and we're tired of being treated like the like the leper of the crypto community. You know what I mean? Yeah.
That's pretty much how it's been. And, that's kind of the thing I've got from the majority of people I've talked with, is that they're really thankful that I came over and did start talking about it, because it's hard when you're kind of in your own little bubble with all of this. Like, you believe in the technology, but you believe only in this technology to the point that's like your only investment is on this chain. So you only believe in the Richard Hart ecosystem. So it's like believing in that so much when you have all of the other communities telling you how stupid you are, how it's going to go to zero, how he's a scammer, all of that. Yet you have to constantly deny that. And then you have to also reaffirm to yourself that why you believe it, what's valuable about it. And then to continue to hold throughout the bear markets after experiencing all of that stuff, like, it's almost impossible. So like, anybody that's been able to do that, shout out to you, considering, for me, all I've ever done is followed the communities that I see where they're creating the most value. where the most money in DeFi is going to come in, where they're making the most revolutionary technology, whatever that was always my focus. And over the time, I've seen the community shift and change, and everything's kind of gone their own ways. And the one thing about PulseChain is it's only just kind of made the community stronger and bigger. As there's new, technologies that are created, as there's new projects that get added, you're going to see the huge rift in the community coming from, the maxis that are only, Hex. And then you have the other ones that are, okay, well, I like Hex and I like PulseX and I like PulseChain. And then you have the other ones that are like, well, I like those, but then I like these too. So you're going to get a huge mix of all of those. And that's why it doesn't really matter where your place is, whatever you are. If you're a maxi, if you're, you have a few key coins that you hold, it, all of that is valuable in its own way. But with the layer 1 coming, there's going to be so much new money that floods in. And so I think a lot of people's opinions are going to shift over the next couple of years when, more reputable people continue to want to build over here. Because, it takes one good project from some good founder that people know to move over, and everybody in the community says, I'm buying that right now. So I think that that's going to be what takes place, is the emotional reaction, because emotions drive anybody to make any decision. I found that these people in this community are a lot more willing to just, set their emotions aside and focus on the long term. But at the same time, when we see all of this new money come on, when we see this layer 1 explode, like we've seen other layer 1s explode, I've watched as those communities have changed just because of how all of this new money, it has a tendency to change people. And so, it's going to be interesting to see how everybody navigates that. It's going to be interesting to see what people come onto this chain from other communities. You're going to have all of the Solana Degans and all of the other, Arbitrum people, and, how they react to this community and how the community reacts to them. I'm really excited to see that, because it's going to be kind of interesting.
It's going to be great. I feel like you hit the nail on the head. Is everyone's coping in the Hex, myself included, right? And the Hex ecosystem, because we went from a one coin society to a whole, giant playground of anyone can build whatever they want. I like to say I'm maximal-ish, right? I do hold maybe 5% of my bags are in random coins, like, Fame token and just random stuff like that, PHUX. 95% of my bag is in the core coins, but I'm maximal-ish because I have to be open-minded enough to admit that some people from other communities don't want to get in directly into Hex, go from A to B. They want to go from A to C to B on a narrative that they're already familiar with. And maybe, who knows, maybe one of the many projects on the launchpad ends up catching the AI meme wave or the GameFi meme wave. And these tokens, you don't know which one it's going to be. There might be 100 projects that launch and maybe 10 of them do well, but you're going to catch some of the people that are following those narratives as well. Even though I'm locked into what I want to buy. All I'm buying is basically PulseChain, Hex, PulseX at this point. It's tempting to look at other stuff like this because you realize that it's different strokes for different folks. Charles does have a tough question for you. He just wants to know, do you own part of the project? Did they give you a token allocation? How does that work?
Yeah, so basically I am a part of their partners. I guess the real technical term would be an advisor for these guys. So yeah, we have a vesting schedule set up with not so much like founding tokens, because that's separate. The founders have their own supply. And then for the partners, they have their own supply set aside. So then I'm just part of the advising team of this. And then so is Dom with Ferrum Networks. You have the main team that's building it out. And then you have the advisors that are actually just inside of the project, helping connect the communities, helping to grow the network and stuff. Because when I came on, that was through me that I brought on Dom from Ferrum Networks. And so having both of us kind of there inside of these normal communities, that gave us the easy access to have all of those guys on board from Solana, from, Ethereum, from Arbitrum, from Optimism in these places. So being able to kind of connect with those guys, having us two as just the main advisors, that was kind of our way of being able to start this project, being able to connect with these community members, and then having, ultimately a small percentage of the supply set over. The DAO is going to end up voting on all of that stuff, which is the beauty of it all. So it's community governed, right? So when the Pulse launch platform goes live, everybody that's holding launch tokens is going to get airdropped the DAO governance token. And then through the DAO, you're going to be able to vote and vet which projects get launched, what projects, go through and all of that stuff. And so it's through the DAO that they're also going to take that token supply set aside for the partners, and then they're going to distribute that to everybody that's basically been helping the project. So if you're an early, supporter of the project, you were a moderator in the Discord, whatever it is, it doesn't really matter. You're going to be able to tap into that. And then once, the DAO goes live, once everything's kind of going, the value of the token going up is only going to increase the value that we can give back to those community supporters. So it's really beautiful because none of us really know what we're going to make at the end of the day, because the DAO is going to decide. It's completely like this community. We wanted it to be community governed, but then what we saw with Optimism and also what we've seen with Vitalik Buterin over on Ethereum is public goods funding. So they're basically taking these tokens from these Optimism, the foundation. They have these large token supplies left over, which their token supplies that they hold are a lot bigger than anything Pulse Launch would have. But they have these token supplies. So they're basically giving them to community members that are supporting. Anybody like my buddy, he worked at GitHub, and they sent him $60,000 worth of Optimism tokens just because he's been somebody that was networking for him, bringing in people from other communities. So that was always our initiative as well, was how can we be able to incentivize community support, but then do it in a way where we can keep the community, keep it 100% community governed, because it doesn't work that way if you have private allocations, if you have token cells, if you have venture capitalists that come up and buy up all the supply. And so that was the one thing that we were staying away from. There's 20% that's set aside for the founding team. All of that's locked and vested for 18 months down the road. And then the 10% of the supply is basically left over for all of the Pulse Pioneer grants. That's what the foundation is called. How they're going to distribute everything through the DAO. That's going to be the way that they do that, is basically through the community. And that's the 10% of the supply that's set aside for basically anybody that's been supporting it, whether it's a community project, whether it's an influencer, whether it's a moderator in a Discord, whether it's a charity the community decides to donate to. It could literally be anything.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for answering that. And if you want to clear up the exact percentages, I think that's all in the white paper as well. So you can just go to pulselaunch.xyz, check out the white paper, look at the allocations. Sounds like you're trying to do this in a more fair distribution than it's been done in the past. So we appreciate that. Obviously, that's kind of in line with the whole PulseChain ethos in general. Right. Giving as much power back to the people as you can within reason. All right. I mean, you do have to pay people for doing the actual work of building the things. People don't work for free, which is something that I guess certain community members have a hard time understanding. But no, it's
very, very expensive to build this stuff out.
Yeah, developers,
people that build good stuff, it's a lot of money. It's not cheap at all.
Yeah. But we do, the thing is, we do have a lot of people that do build stuff as a labor of love as well. But it doesn't mean that that's just the way that everyone has to do things, right? So, yeah, different strokes, different folks, guys. Different strokes, different folks. This is a pretty cool advancement, right? In my mind, it kind of legitimizes us because everyone else has a launch pad. Binance Smart Chain, everyone, all the big ones kind of have one. And I was looking at your team too. I noticed that you're partnered with Vibra Finance. Vibra Finance, for people that don't know, is a PulseChain specific network, right? They do a lot of education and onboarding and consulting. And I've known those Vibra Finance people for a long time. So it's good to see those guys on the board too, just because I know that they are definitely part of the PulseChain ecosystem, true hexagons and all that stuff.
They're great people. Their whole team of people has been really great. We've always really greatly supported them because they've kind of been there at the beginning when we were very first starting to reach out with the community. They were always there. They were supporting us. And so we wanted to bring them on. And then also Hexagon Hill's been a huge support as well. So shout out to him. All of these people have been really core with how we've been able to do things, considering I was new to the ecosystem. I didn't really know a lot of people. And so when I came on and kind of got streamlined into things, they've been really helpful in the beginning stages of all of this, just helping us, make sure that we're talking to trustworthy people, because there's so many people that are interested and so many people are also out there with negative intentions. And we ultimately only want people supporting the project that have those good intentions, because it's these people in PulseChain that we see, with whatever it is, their backgrounds, a lot of good people are here, and those are the good people we want to be able to have plugged into all of that.
Yeah. I mean, it's great to know that those Vibra guys are in our corner. I mean, we've known that for a long time, but now that they're working with you too, David's got a pretty good comment. I'm just going to leave this up. It's basically that all of this crypto narrative meme stuff is just a battle of ideas. And yes, the bad ideas will fail. Certain ideas are going to probably launch and then fizzle out because no one's going to care about them, right? Crypto is a place where this launchpad is a place where it's almost like you're decentralizing the role of being a VC, right? In a way. So I think that's a pretty interesting comment. You've got this guy, Miguel Paredes, who's another partner. I don't really know anything about him. He's a street artist kind of guy. Do you want to talk about him?
Right behind me, actually.
Oh, wow. That's nice.
Yeah, so this was the piece that headlined Art Basel in Miami in 2021. That was the crypto-themed one. He was the headlining artist. He's got connections he's partnered with the biggest art gallery in the entire world. I don't remember the exact name. You'd have to look into those details. But basically, they are showing all of his art. He's got over 1 million followers on Instagram. Like, he's a really famous dude. He's been mentored by many of like the most renowned artists of like the modern age. Very famous artist that in the last cycle, I was a lot more involved with that type of stuff, which is how I met him. I was more involved with NFTs and stuff. So we worked together on a project, an NFT project, and he's just a really great person. Basically, we want to bring NFTs over here to PulseChain. Not that there's not ways to do that already, but we really want to bring like valuable NFTs that have multi-purpose, that also have cool art, like real artists, whether it's, limited edition art drops from, Miguel or people he knows, or whether it's like utility NFTs that we can create. That's a huge focus of mine because I see so much value in that. So it's like having some of these people on board. They're people I've worked with. They're people I know. Everybody that like Sensei partners, them coming on board. There's a lot of different dynamics at play because like I have a lot of these connections from the normal world. So plugging all of them into the equation, how we do that specifically, it's not 100% certain, but it's going to be really fun because we have a number of ideas. We already have a lot of projects that have submitted ideas onto Pulse Launch that, we pretty much want to streamline the second that we can, like probably have multiple projects building in the background, just because there is a lot of places where, we can launch a project inside of the PulseChain ecosystem. It can fill an immediate void or a hole. And then, it just, helps the whole chain grows, but then bring new liquidity into the market. That's the big thing. There has to be a certain amount of liquidity inside of PulseChain. If this thing's ever going to get adoption, there has to be liquidity because the whales aren't going to come over here unless there is. So it's very important that the framework exists for the whales to be able to come on the scene. So far, I think that almost the majority of things that are on PulseChain that we need are pretty much here. The kind of last missing piece of the puzzle that we could see was the launch pad. Like, there is other things, and I can't go into exact details because that's projects that are in the pipeline coming up. But that was the first big glaring hole, was like, okay, well, there's no launch pad. Because there's no launch pad, we can also launch these other projects that are also going to fill immediate holes. So it just allows our network to instantly grow and kind of cement ourselves as like blue chips inside of the PulseChain ecosystem relatively quickly because of the amount of projects we can streamline to the ecosystem.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad someone with your experience has jumped onto this particular opportunity because, yeah, it was kind of lacking. Like I said, we did have an old launch pad that kind of rugged or something. I don't even know what happened to that thing, but yeah, you're, I'm in the dark on NFTs, but I know, and I will reach out to you like after this. I'll DM you a lot of the existing creators that I know about. We got like Pulse Funks and Beatbox, all these different platforms, all these different creators. We've got some kind of a collective called Tang Gang, who I'm sure you've heard of. But it'd be great to get your connections, with, this Miguel guy seems pretty cool. If you know the original Punks people, that'd be awesome to get some attention from those guys. I know your profile picture, I think, is an OG Pulse Punk. Am I right on that?
It's an Ethereum Punk.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. I say Pulse Punk so much, but yeah.
I thought that's what you meant, and I just wanted to make sure. But yeah, no. Yeah, I really believe in, punks as a whole, the Ethereum punks. But yeah, I've actually seen the Pulse Punks around, and they look cooler. I'm not going to lie.
It's the background.
Yeah.
No, but it's cool, man. Like, it's like kind of a status symbol for people to have those OG crypto punks. I remember Brian Armstrong had one for a while, his profile picture.
Yeah,
But
honestly, I think that that's going to be a brand new wave again. Like you're going to see all that come back full force. You're going to see everybody, all the big athletes and celebrities and stuff changing their profile pictures to NFTs. And it's
look,
kind of silly, but I
they
only
survived.
bought it because I believed that my money that was sitting in Ethereum was better spent in a CryptoPunk, because I firmly believe that the thing about CryptoPunks and NFTs as a whole is they outperform their native chain tokens. So if you're trading these NFTs, it's usually against Pulse, I would assume. I have not used any of the NFT platforms, but I would guess that. So if you have an NFT that goes up in value, it's going up in value against Pulse. You want to make more Pulse. NFTs are a great way of doing that, even though people have a really hard time understanding why anybody would buy them. I understand that. But when I bought my CryptoPunk, I can read charts, right? And I knew that based off the chart, this thing was going to outperform the value of Ethereum. So by me just holding my Ethereum in a wallet, I was losing money when I could just buy a CryptoPunk. And it was basically the same as taking a leverage trade on Ethereum. So I believe that NFTs are a leveraged bet on the native chain token that they're built on. And only if they're good ones, though, right? Like they've got to be a good one. There has to be some reason people are buying them. Otherwise, they're garbage and they will steal your money, which a lot of them do that. A lot of them will do that on PulseChain too. But I think right now, getting into some of these early projects is not a bad thing because they will go up in value long term.
Yeah, I was shocked that they just survived, right? NFTs in general. I didn't see the whole playing card collectible meme as an investment. I saw it as like playing cards, right?
Yeah.
But then you've got the fact that Punk survived, freaking Pudgy Penguins came out of nowhere. They got a deal with Walmart somehow. Wouldn't have guessed that. It's almost like how can you possibly know? Ether rocks. I thought it was the dumbest fucking thing. And then they're still trading. I mean, it is dumb. It's objectively dumb, but people like that it's dumb. And then you've got the Bored Ape Yacht Club, who I don't even know if that's still,
their old founder just announced he was coming back. So that old guy that basically ran them in the bear market, like, I don't know what happened to him, but they're coming back. And that's the thing is Yuga Labs, that's who owns the Bored Apes or created them. They also own the CryptoPunks. So they're part of the same conglomerate. They've never done anything with CryptoPunks yet, but they do own them to the point, like if they were to airdrop anything, they could. But I think that Yuga is going to take off again. Like they just got flipped by Pudgy Penguins. And that's the thing is it's so silly because you're buying these NFTs and it's usually just a cartoon. That's the thing that detours everyone from getting into NFTs is why would I spend all of this ETH or all of this Pulse or whatever it is on this picture when I could just own PulseChain or like I could just own Ethereum. And I understand that, but at the same time, it's the same reason these altcoins go up in value is because of the same emotions. If you were to understand the details of these tokens, if you looked at the tokenomics, if you looked at the teams, if you looked at all of the details of the liquidity, you would see that 99% of cryptos are garbage. 99% of them don't do anything. They're just there to take your money. And it's no different than them putting a silly cartoon animal on a card and saying, this is the token versus you buying some sketchy, obscure altcoin that is just the same thing. Like there really is no difference. It's just emotions that drive people to buy things. But the certain NFTs that are providing value, whether that's rev share, whether that's airdrops, whether, I don't know exactly how Pudgy Penguins works it because I don't actually own any. But, with my Neo Tokyo I hold, by owning my Neo Tokyo and staking 2,000 bytes, I get access to all of their launch pads and the entire network, crypto gaming network of all of crypto is Neo Tokyo. So
you basically get all the founders, right? You can talk to all the founders of all the GameFi stuff. I mean, I've followed Alex Becker for a while. It's not my niche, but yeah, there's value to the being in a club thing for sure. You've also got new stuff. I mean, we've got Gophers and RH. We've got 404 memes, right? The ERC 404. I don't know if that's got staying power, right? But we've got that on PulseChain too. We've got composable NFTs. You've got like Tang Talk Wireless and then Heart Heads, which is like get your own Richard Hart action figure and you can like dress them up with different things. So composable NFTs are allowed to be changed and added to, right? And I think there's probably some synergy here with whatever connections you've got in the NFT space. Again, I'll shoot you all the most relevant platforms and creators and stuff and chat rooms you might want to get in. Because there could be some synergy and some sparks flying if you never know, right? You never know. It is leverage on the way up and on the way down, right? And it's just a matter of if you get lucky and you pick the survivors, good for you. That's not the game I play, but I know it's like, you know, the
Take
other half of
profits.
crypto.
That's what I recommend. Anybody that's getting into this stuff, sell it. Like when you're in profit, sell it, because the only person you can blame is yourself. Like if you're early to a project that does well, like you're literally just stupid for not selling it. Like the only way you actually make profit is if you sell something. So for me, I'm in and out based off cycles. I'm going to sell everything that I own in crypto over the next couple years. Like I'm not long-term staking anything. I don't believe in anything long-term enough to stake it, just because it's not that I don't believe in the tokenomics of coins. Because when you look at Hex, I believe, you know, full-heartedly what it is, what it does. It's just that for me personally, what you have to be banking on is new liquidity coming in. And my thought process is way more short-sighted with, you know, getting in and out of cycles, understanding 4-year cycles, because I've been able to perfectly play the cycles up to this point. Like I haven't had any real issues being able to do that. So I stick to the same plan. I can take profits in the bull run. I don't have to nail the exact top. I don't have to nail the exact bottom. But how hard everything drops every single bear market. This is now my 3rd bull run. So I've been through 2 of them already. Yep. They're all the same. They all drop. Liquidity leaves. Liquidity is never coming back into the market until the market resets. And my thought process is, now that there's institutions, what more needs to happen in the market before the institutions just are here to basically pump for retail investors to realize their gains? Because what we see historically is once the institutions come on board, you see a huge, you know, rally in price. And then that's usually driven because of retail FOMO, because they collaborate with the institutions to drive the mainstream news to shill stuff. So when all of that happens, the reason the institutions are doing all of that is because they need exit liquidity. That's what is pretty much coming in this cycle. So I don't find it likely that anybody that stakes, I'm not saying that that's a bad idea. It's just that my personal thesis is not to do that. And my personal thesis revolves around taking profit and getting out of crypto, taking that profit and going into other markets, going into oil companies, going into uranium, going into gold and silver miners. Commodities as a whole are booming because we have the biggest inflation that we've ever had in our whole life. So there's a lot of opportunities. You don't need to just have your magnifying glass on crypto, because as me going through all these cycles, I've been wrecked enough times. I've seen other people get wrecked enough times to know if you're not taking profits and moving into other things, you're kind of just shooting yourself in the foot, in my opinion.
Look, that was well said. Not everyone's going to time the market well like you did, but you're a good success story, a good example, right? Unfortunately, a lot of people, they buy more at the tops. They don't do positioning. They don't buy. They don't become greedy when others are fearful, and fearful when others are greedy. You could tell people that all day long, but only a certain set of people. I'm glad that you're one of them. It took me 2 cycles to learn, but yeah, I was able to divest, you know, a bit in the last cycle. Obviously, everybody wishes that they sold more and time the perfect top. Yeah. I stake in my Hex staking ladder, right? And for the new people, right, you can make multiple Hex stakes. You don't just have to make one. And a lot of people do a ladder strategy, such as myself, so that I don't really have to time the market, and I can kind of structure my ladder where I think the peaks of the next bull run will be. Right. For example, I don't have a lot of stakes in 2026 because I think that might be potentially another bear year, or 2027. I have, more. I'm kind of in line with the 4-year cycles as well, but I kind of make my staking ladder personal to what I think is going to happen in the market over the long term. And I am staked 10 plus years. 15 years, actually. 5,555 days is my longest stake. And that's because I believe crypto is still going to be here. And I believe it is the highest appreciating. It is. Objectively, it's the highest appreciating asset class of all time. But that said, once you've been in crypto for 9 years, I totally understand where you're coming from. You don't want to have all your eggs in the same basket forever, right? Yeah. But when people are starting out, they do need that 100x. They do need that 1,000x to escape. Sure. I call it like financial escape velocity. I'm pretty sure I heard that from somewhere else. I didn't invent that phrase, but you need to be able to launch yourself out of the debt cycle that we're all stuck in, kind of, or just the rat race, the 9-to-5 grind, right? Because your 401k is not going to retire you, right? And by the time you actually do retire, like, you might not even really think about the cost of waiting and working a job you hate, just to one day retire. Like, I don't even believe in the whole concept. But anyway, I'm getting away from myself. You talked about cycles, and that goes in line with your previous video, which I was watching, about, the 4-year cycle theory. I know you subscribed to that. You said Bob Lucas was a big influence.
Yeah.
Everyone kind of believes in the 4-year cycle theory. I do too. I'm kind of banking on it. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, it keeps working until sometime, it won't. It keeps working until it doesn't. So I do believe we're in for a great 24 and 25 just due to the 4-year cycle. But how do you see this cycle playing out? Do you think it's going to be different this time, or do you think it's, what do you think?
Already different. So, well, I mean, like I use time because time is the only constant in crypto. As crazy as the price gets, how Bitcoin made this weird looking double top thing in the last cycle, how it was a little uncustomary, it still followed a 4-year cycle. So by understanding the time, even though the price is going to differ and the emotions are high, it's through the time that we're able to kind of cut through all of that crap. So the only two scenarios that I mean, when we're talking about this cycle, we're already at a quicker pace towards new all-time highs than any of the prior cycles. So that's already an outlier. If we were to go into a new all-time high at this same pace, I do believe that leads to an early cycle top. It would be a blow-off top where things get really hyped really quickly in a short amount of time, and it just is unsustainable and will lead into probably a longer bear market. Because if we have a shortened cycle, meaning like time frame wise, we can still go to 150K per Bitcoin. We can still have a huge swing really short, but it would probably be happening inside of this year, right? Where it would be just 2024 is way more bullish. Bitcoin right now just starts going into a new all-time high, like within the next couple months. That's when I'm going to be to the point where I'm thinking, okay, this isn't sustainable. This is an early cycle top. We have to get out of here quick.
But you know why I think that's not happening? Sorry to cut you off, but I believe it's almost a blessing in disguise that we saw so many people sell the news. We saw institutions sell the news on the Bitcoin ETF. Thus, it makes me less certain. I don't think that we're going to have a cycle cut short. I don't think that we're going to have irrational exuberance and like peak out at 120K Bitcoins, in the next couple of months or whatever, because FTX and all these other, Celsius, they took this opportunity to dump Bitcoin on retail's heads. And that actually suppressed the price. So I think it makes me believe that we're going to have a typical cycle actually. So it's almost good that Bitcoin's still at 50K. If it went up too fast, too high, like you said, we'd be in for what goes up must come down.
Yeah. And that's the way I'm looking at it. Like what I want to see right now is a correction in Bitcoin. I would love to see that. If we can, maybe we peak up here about 60K or something like that, somewhere in that range. And then we start a move back down to like 37, 38K. That would put us right back down with our historic trend line that we've been building to begin this new cycle. That would also be giving us a big enough reset, which is, customary of prior cycles to begin new uptrends. And then that would be putting us the amount of time that would take for us to have a correction, for us to reconsolidate. The halving is 2 months away. So maybe the halving ends up being a sell the news type of event where we pull back 20, 30% or so. And that gives us the opportunity to kind of reaccumulate, spend a little bit more time building a foundation before mid to end this year. That's when we start getting towards those prior new all-time highs. So that would be where I think we follow the conventional 4-year cycle. But I think both scenarios, we're going to see a more powerful cycle regardless. Whether it's a left translation, which just means the early cycle top in a 4-year cycle, I still think it's going to be very powerful, driven by a lot of retail mania. But then in the same way, if we have a normal 4-year cycle and we extend all the way to the end of 2025, have a normal 3-year bull market like we've been accustomed to seeing, it's going to be a very powerful 3-year bull market, a lot more similar to what we saw in 2017, how that was a lot more retail induced than we had probably seen in other cycles. Last cycle, I was there throughout all the way at the beginning of 2016 and 17. So I was watching how that cycle compared to our last one. And our last one just had the pandemic and too many factors with FTX and stuff that
the double top.
Yeah, it wasn't the same. There wasn't the same retail mania, which I think comes into this cycle, especially if we get that 4-year cycle, the normal one. It's going to be just the most profitable cycle that we've probably ever been a part of. So that's what I want.
Yeah, I mean, I'm agreeing with you, obviously, because I'm heavily irresponsibly long crypto. Of course, I would love that to happen. But I also, for the reasons you mentioned, I do think that this time it's not different. This time it's the same old 4-year extended rally, hopefully into 25, maybe even late 2025, and 3-year bull market sounds great to me. One thing I want to note, we're talking about Bitcoin, guys, just in terms of the cycles. Bitcoin kind of defines the cycle. You mentioned that we could see, a 20 to 30% retracement of Bitcoin if it goes maybe up to 60, 70 and pulls back. I want to let people know that in 2017, we had Bitcoin at $3,000, right? That was like all time, like everyone hated Bitcoin when it was 3K. Then it spiked all the way up to $14,000. And then before it had its huge run up, it actually retraced all the way back down to 4,000, I believe. Yeah. So it was like not a 20, 30% correction. It was like a 70%. It was like another giant 60% correction. And it was one last nail in the coffin for all the scared emotional money to just quit, right? They threw their chips in. They're like, oh, I knew this was all a scam. Like I knew Bitcoin wasn't going anywhere. And then it just ripped, right? And you would just hate to be that guy getting shaken out by. All I'm saying, guys, is it might not be a 30% dip, might be 50, might be 60. These cycles have a funny way of messing with your emotions to the maximum degree. Just diamond hands, boys and girls.
I mean, that's really all you can do. Like if you're playing the cycles, understanding the time frames, to me, that when I understood that, when I looked at the charts, when I saw how perfectly Bitcoin followed that, it was like, okay, well, obviously there's validity here. But with that, like you said, we can't follow the same thing forever and ever and ever. There's always going to be a change. Just because in 2016 and 17, Bitcoin just had this perfect uptrend and just made perfect higher highs. Well, the next cycle, we had a 70% drop that liquidated everybody and ruined the whole market right before it went to a new all-time high. So you never know 100%. And that's why it's like, for me, I play the time frames. I understand that there can be a deviation from those time frames. I know how to play that. But even with me playing that, it's still the large level of like, I don't know, like I don't say luck because I mean, there is a partial level of luck, but it's just like understanding and timing the market comes with like being in the market. Time in the market allows you to actually time the market. And so a lot of that, if we do have a shortened cycle, will simply just come down to like how you're feeling, like your own gauging of the sentiment in the market. Because if we have a normal 4-year cycle, then we're going to be topping at the end of the year 2025. Like it's just going to follow that. But if we don't do that, that's when it's like, okay, well, how do I have a plan for this? Like, how can I execute and how can I maintain profits if I'm proven wrong in some sort of way? And, all of those are just going to be things that everybody has to do their own. It's all from just learning experience. That's why I do my YouTube channel, is to try and teach people as much as I can to help. I want people to make money. I don't want people to be exit liquidity. I want people to make money. That's always been my goal, always been my focus. And if people do it right, the amount they can realize in a crypto cycle is so much greater than anything else. And then it's like you said, if you're starting from nothing, you need to start with crypto probably to get that 100x. But once you get that 100x and you're sitting at few $100K or a few $1 million or, whatever it is, now you can take that. Now you can put it into like, so many other opportunities that are guaranteeing you long-term profit or guaranteeing that you have long-term value tucked away somewhere. And then you're still having money to go at the cycles. You don't have to, if you're staked long-term, like you said, you can set it in a way that is proportionate so that you can still realize profit. It's not like you have to just be, balls to the wall, all in for, 15 years. You can't ever take any of that out and move it. You can do so many other things. And that's my focus is, even if you are, staked, it's not necessarily that that's a bad thing. It's that if you still end up doing that right and you follow the right people that know how to accurately, structure their ladders, you actually can time the cycles and play the long-term game at the same time. And I do see extreme value in doing that. And so like, even though I might not be doing, 15, 10-year, 5-year stakes even, I see the value in the people that do, and I don't actually discredit anybody for doing it.
Well, to me, the hex staking ladder forces me to place my time-based bets early on, place my window. I think there will be higher concentrations of euphoria in the markets. Right. And then it gives me the breathing room to say, okay, I can assess where we're at because this stake is due. And now I have to make a decision. Do I sell some or all, or do I restake all? My more recent stakes, I'm restaking all of it because I think 90%, after 90% dip is not the time to be taking profit right now, personally. But that's what the hex staking ladder to me allows you to kind of think critically about these cycles. And even if you're not doing that, for anybody out there listening, guys, you don't want to round trip the cycle. I know there's a lot of first time cycle guys out there, first timers in crypto. We all, I mean, you and me both, I know we were saying how we round tripped the first cycle, right? We didn't take profit, and it typically takes people at least one cycle to learn, which when you think about it is like 4 to 5 years to really learn. Yeah. We're trying to say, don't do that. Let me try to save you a couple of years on that whole process, but still, you're probably, I mean, you need to have critical thinking if you want any chance at getting out at the top, which is really just saying, think about how you're thinking and take the time to think about how the market is feeling. Yeah. I follow a guy called Your Friend Sami. You might have heard of him. He's obsessed with this concept. He's obsessed with like sniffing around and seeing how angry people are or how euphoric people are. I like that, right? You want to use people as signals, right? When, when Paris Hilton comes back and she starts showing NFT, maybe a top signal. I don't know. She's been one before. So, maybe it's going to be a different celebrity this time. But, when Gary Vaynerchuk is making doodle NFTs that like just suck, like, maybe everyone's hopping on the hype train. Maybe it's time for you, the savvy investor that packed their bag early, to take a little profit.
It's true. Well, funny you bring up Gary Vaynerchuk. He met with Miguel about Miguel doing NFTs for him. And I thought that was funny because that was those NFTs were worth like 20 Ethereum or more when ETH was worth like $4,000+. And I remember seeing that and going to their website and looking at them and just thinking, Gary literally took 5 seconds to draw this on a piece of paper. And it's a picture of the drawing on the piece of paper. It's not even anything else. And so when my friend called me and said that he had just had a meeting with him and he was like talking about working together, I was like thinking in my head, well, thank God he's finally going to have good art for once. Cause like that's such a funny thing about NFTs is they are so silly in like a large degree of almost all of them.
Well, look, dude, yeah, it's easy to say Gary Vaynerchuk's NFTs sucked, but then you look at Ether Rocks. And it's like,
I know a guy that put in he probably bought him for like 20 Ethereum or something. And like, it's worth way more. I know they've been only going up in value since this new cycle started. And it's so silly because I don't understand the Ether Rocks, right? I understand CryptoPunks being the first, semi-first, like they're older than the NFT token script itself. So they're not even technically an NFT token. They're some other kind of ERC20 token. So they're so old that they like predate the NFT. So there's that creativity, there's that the collectible aspect of them. They're not creative at all. They're so dumb. It's literally like it's worse than a Minecraft character. Like it could not get more silly. But it's just that the whales have decided that it's like Michael Jordan rookie cards. Like that's CryptoPunks of blockchain. And it took me a long time to wrap my head around that. But once I did, it was finally like, okay, well, I'm willing to part with some of my Ethereum to do this. Cause like whales do believe in it. And that's like what I do is just follow where the money goes. And as silly as it sounds, like it's always some silly stuff that ends up doing well for some reason.
Yeah. And hey, if you're following Yuga Labs, they've paid off CoinGecko to be in like every single one of their newsletters, right? It's like, you got to wonder where is the money? Shout out to Gophers. Charles loves his Gophers. Yeah. ERC 404. I bought a Gopher to see how it worked. And then I sold it again for a little bit of profit, but then it just kept going higher. So I'm a little salty about my Gopher right now. I got rid of, I don't know what's going to happen with those, but I don't currently own one. So, I guess I don't care as much. What was I going to say though? Oh, Thick Pokemon. That was my favorite from last cycle. Thick Pikachu.
Oh my gosh.
Shit, dude.
About those. There's so many silly things. Like there's just a lot of really silly things. And that is really like NFTs themselves. They came into the market during the silliness. Like that was when we're talking about warning signs to watch for. NFTs themselves spawned and were a warning sign to an extent. This cycle, they've already got washed out in the bear market to where like the only projects around are ones that are going to end up either adding more value to their holders, or they're just going to die out, or there's just going to be, retail money that ends up pumping them again in the same ways that it did in the last cycle. Regardless, like going through that little washout period, this is the first time where NFTs are actually undervalued. It's actually not the point where it's like, okay, these are silly, but we're going to get back to those same points where it's like people are just spending money on any dumb thing. It's really funny because we're already seeing a lot of that this cycle. Like NFTs are already kind of blowing up to some extent. Meme coins are such a huge focal point in everybody's portfolio, it seems like. You just didn't see that type of stuff in prior cycles leading into the cycle top of the last one. So to see that still here, even after a bear market, it just makes me think that like we're about to see a really hype cycle, because like there's still just a lot of funny money here as a whole.
Right. Yeah, the meme coin degeneracy, it's thriving on PulseChain. We've got all kinds of meme coins, like just PDAI. The PulseChain version of the copy DAI is somehow like the strongest meme that we've got.
But I understand that, because like,
Yeah.
here's the thing. If that actually were to be a real thing, if they actually use a maker fork to peg that back to $1, and if they do it organically, the way that they already launched these stable coins is through private funding. They raise it up to a certain amount of hundreds of millions, and then they can back the value of that through their maker token, or however their DAO does it. Anyways, if by having the PDAI token naturally and organically rise to $1, it makes it decentralized, because if Richard Hart were to implement a maker, like to be able to stabilize the price, like it would be the only stable coin you couldn't control. So I do see that value. I genuinely don't know if it's real or not. Like, I've heard both sides of the story. Like, well, it's a fun narrative to play regardless, but if it was real, like, it would be actually revolutionary. And I think that it would almost be silly of Richard Hart not to do that, just because it's probably going to get close enough to $1 as is that, you know, it probably wouldn't even be that hard to peg it.
I fucking hope so, man. I've got a bag that I never sold from the store, dude. Like, I'm not buying it though, because I know there's other people with huge bags ready to sell. And who knows, they're gonna sell it 10 cents, 20 cents, the whole way up. So it's gonna be a long battle, but I've got a little bag. So
it's
by all means, everybody,
worth the gamble in my eyes. Definitely worth the gamble. Like, without a doubt, if it were to be true, like, you would just make so much money. It's almost silly not to.
I mean, how awesome would it be to have an actual decentralized stablecoin that's only backed by the shared fiction of everyone in it? Like, that's as crypto as it gets, right?
And that's why I'm on PulseChain, right? Is because it's the most decentralized chain. It's like, when I heard about the narrative of PDAI, I was like, it was like, boom, an epiphany. I was like, wow, not only is it the most decentralized chain already, but if that were to actually be a true narrative that stuck, it would have the only truly decentralized DeFi network coming from a better Bitcoin alternative in Hex, a better Ethereum alternative in PulseChain, and then you'd have a better stable coin in PDAI. All of that existing on one universally decentralized chain where none of the tokens are existing anywhere. People don't see the value in that because they don't understand decentralization. But that's why I got into Bitcoin in 2016, was seeing the value of what a truly decentralized network can be. We've moved from that. It's no longer that. ETH is no longer that. Bitcoin is no longer that. But PulseChain is the last place where that actually exists. So I got into PulseChain for that reason. I actually believed in the value of the ecosystem for what it has been and for what has been created, whether it was by choice of Richard Hart or whether it was by default of the gatekeeping. I don't care. That is what exists now. And if they could plug in PDAI, it would literally change the entire game of all of crypto. And that's not even just like conspiracy. It's just the facts of the matter.
Yeah, I got my popcorn on that one, man. So, I mean, there's some crazy PDAI people out there. I'll let them take it because I've only got 24 hours in a day. But I'm not going to be like PDAI crypto coffee now. But, you know, it's cool. It's cool to see. What was I going to say? Yeah, so you said the narrative on PulseChain. It's easy to buy into, guys. Like, the narrative of PulseChain is cheaper, faster Ethereum, and we get to inherit every improvement potentially that Ethereum makes. But what do you think about this Denkun update, EIP 4844, lowering the fees on the ETH side?
See, I've always known that was going to happen inevitably. I knew that eventually ETH would scale to some extent, like whether that was a layer 2 that did it for them or whether that was something else. I didn't really know for sure. But I figured that it would take them long enough that layer 2s would still blow up in a big way. There would still be a lot of profit to go around from those. But then also, like, when it comes to like the whole scalability of Ethereum, I think that what we'll end up doing is more or less just plugging into Ethereum, and will be so universally chained that it'll almost be like different apps on the App Store. Like, they'll all interact with each other. There won't be any issue with the fees, but the ones that get the first movers advantage and get the adoption first will be sort of like the app or the dApps on the App Store, I guess you could say. So I still think that there's going to be value to go around regardless of if and when that goes through, if it actually made ETH scalable and all of that stuff.
Well, I'm with you on that. I've actually said that I use the metaphor of comparing us. It's what we're doing right now is like we're arguing over operating systems, and there's not going to be one winner. There might not even be two winners, but we're arguing like if PulseChain and Ethereum are like the Windows and Apple, that also leaves room for like a Linux and a couple of other ones too. Yeah. So there won't be 50 winners, but there might be 5. Yeah. And these big 5 or whatever they end up being, I think PulseChain is going to be a huge contender for that role. They're going to be so interoperable that you can launch an app on it, like just like you can use you can use iMet, or you can sign into your iCloud on a Windows machine, right? Yeah. So it's like there will be ways where it's going to get super complex. I don't know how it's going to happen. There's probably going to be some revolutionary interoperability protocol breakthroughs, especially in the bridging space, because that's kind of like we need a breakthrough there. But we need to get it to the point where maybe 5-10 years from now, it doesn't matter if I'm accepting money on ETH, but I'm paying you from PulseChain. I can send money from me to you, and all that stuff happens underneath, like under the hood.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the interesting thing, is seeing what projects stick around. And like the problem with all the other chains I've been on is just the fact that they are so focused on how the normal world works, how everything has to be VCs and then seed funding and then the influencers and then the pre-sale and then the public sell and all of this crap. Like that's how all of the other chains work. And then when you look at Solana, aside from memes, like I genuinely don't know that Solana is valuable or used for anything like genuine. Like I really don't think it is. Arbitrum, 75% of all Ethereum leaving centralized exchanges is bridging to Arbitrum. And Optimism, it's a lesser amount, but it's just that competitor right there. So there's value in these other chains, but I think that with PulseChain, it's the only one that's decentralized. And I think that there's just so much value in that. And that has always been the reason I've believed in crypto. It's the reason why I've stayed in crypto. And over the years, it's been the reason why I've hated crypto, because we've stopped being that. So it's like having this is like that last place. I think that there's a lot of value in that. People don't give Richard Hart credit for what he has created. And I genuinely don't know if it was purposeful or what. I think that what happened was he was gate capped with Hex. It made it the most decentralized form of finance in the market. And then he saw the value in being fully decentralized. So then he launched PulseChain. And then that just kind of like enhanced the whole, allowed it to scale it and allowed it for new people to come into the chain. Because how else are you going to add a value proposition to Hex besides allowing it to be basically the store of value on that layer 1? So I think that he's already off to such a great start. And it's really that key focal point of there's no tokens on centralized exchanges. All of everything's in, on chain. That's the value I see in it. And I want it to stay that way. I do understand the argument for like a Coinbase listing for Pulse so that you can get that liquidity, because we do have issues with bridges. But at the same time, man, the one issue with all the other communities is they've stopped being decentralized and they've moved towards being how the normal crypto world works. And I just encourage everybody to stay true to decentralization and build an alternative, even though it is going to be hard at the first, even though you might miss out on an opportunity here, or it might be hard to move money at a certain point. Like the real opportunity is by building truly decentralized, forms of technology. And there's only one chain that exists, in my opinion, and that's PulseChain, that it kind of has the liquidity for people to be able to build over here, and has the network of community where you can still like be seen and get people that want to like come over here as well. But it's got that entire network effect and the decentralized aspect with the technology all kind of going at it for this cycle. So to me, like it easily could be a top 5. It could be a top 2 or 3. I don't know, because I think there's going to be a lot of players in the game because there's so many different forms of technology. But when we're talking about layer 1s, yeah, like maybe there's only 3, 4, 5, or 6 that are like the key focal points. But because none of the other ones, because they've sold out from being decentralized at this point, I think that there will be value in, what PulseChain already offers and what's already here.
You nailed it. I'm very impressed that you came up with that conclusion, right? Because that's literally what Richard Hart has built. And not a lot of people can see that this early on. That's why we're excited about this. what Richard built is PulseChain Hex, PulseX. They're in line with the ideals of crypto, the ethos of the cypherpunks.
Yep.
The original reason why crypto was invented, to get rid of middlemen, to take the power back in your own hands. And, clip out this past 2 minutes, Donovan exposes centralized exchange, centralized fake crypto, because that's what it is. It's all the same old stuff, same old playbook. And you were able to explain that really eloquently.
Thank you. Well, I mean, I've seen it. And it pissed me off. That's why I quit working with Ferrum networks and stuff. Was just because, like, I felt like I loved the projects, but the projects launching, they had the same tokenomics, and so it was like, well, you could take the same model and then you could change the tokenomics to where that benefits the average investor. And I think that that's the real value. And Richard Hart's done a phenomenal job of that. Like, helping the average person get involved with stuff, calling out all the centralized bull crap that happens on these other exchanges and on these other, in the normal crypto world. It was the 22 bear market really opened my eyes to just how detrimental all of that crap truly is, which I already knew about it before. I have a buddy that lost tens of millions of dollars in today's market value in Bitcoin from Mt. Gox. Like, there's just been so many of these same occurrences happen every single cycle. It doesn't matter. It was just that the last one had way more leverage than ever before. So we saw much more of a liquidation than was possible in the prior cycle. So going into this one, I think that we're set so much better off with having all of these new ways to transact value with PulseChain, with PulseX, with, Hex now having 2 versions over here. Like, it allows more scalability than ever before. And those key values, like you said, having all of that already here, like, you just don't see that in the other chains. And I really try and get people to realize, like, how scary and how much money you can lose and how rigged everything is set up for the average person on these other chains. And that's really why I'm trying to, enforce the people that are already here, that have kind of been in a bubble, that don't fully know how these other places work. They don't know how predatory it is, to the extent of, like, seeing the tokenomics firsthand, looking at the contracts, looking at all the details. Like, I saw all of that stuff. So I've just, came over here because I like the average person. I don't want them to get wrecked. I see that this is kind of the same dynamic across the board from all of the other influencers I've talked to. And that, to me, is, why I got into crypto. It's my morals as a person. And so it makes sense that I would also invest to those same sort of, standards.
Yeah, man. I love that. I resonate with that. That's why I'm here too. I could be semi-retired. I could just go off and fade away into the sunset right now, but I know the potential of the astronomical, life-changing gains that this can do for people. Of course, it took longer than we all expected, but nothing that's good is, comes quickly and easily. And it's going to be an emotional roller coaster, but we're here. The reason we're still here throughout, our 3rd cycle now and becoming public figures is, again, just to help people get that conviction that sometimes you don't have when you're just starting out.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, everybody needs a little bit of help. And, funny enough, the last couple weeks, I've had so many different questions from, people asking me questions about how to bridge, how to do this, how to do that. And it was like right after you asked me to come over here and stream that I was Googling, like, having these questions and then Googling, the answers to them. And then it was always one of your videos popping up. So I was always like, okay, well, here it is. Like, I'd watch it, look it through, make sure it was good. And then I'd just send it to them. And so I really do appreciate what you've already done so far with how you make, really informative educational content that helps a lot of people, considering that's kind of the issue with PulseChain right now. It's hard to get people over here. People don't know how to bridge. They don't know how to use some of these things. And you have to kind of learn how, if you're going to end up putting money over here. So having channels like yours that have already kind of cemented themselves as being the leaders for that, helping people come on chain, I see a lot of value in that. And I do really appreciate that, because I've literally been sharing your content with people. So, it's actually helped me out with, getting some of these questions answered. So thank you once again.
Hey, love to hear that. Very grateful that you're over here in our neck of the woods. We welcome you with open arms. Glad to have someone with your experience building. Like I said, I'll just repeat myself one last time. Whatever happens with the Pulse launch project, it's going to be a net positive. I firmly believe that. So look into it or not. I'm not. You don't have to. You could do whatever you want with your money. I'm just leading you to Donovan here, everybody. So yeah, I'm the face of PulseChain, guys. All it takes is just do the tags in your YouTube videos. Sometimes I wonder, like, if every single person just made one how to buy PulseChain video, and like we had just, let's say we had 100 people do that, and we just flood YouTube with that. It wouldn't take that. They're not all going to be good. Some people are going to be better than others in terms of camera and talking ability. But if we all just made the very simple tutorial stuff, like I wonder if that would help but again, everyone's adding value in their own way. YouTube is not the only way. That's just what I chose to do. So,
right. Well, that was one of my ideas, was to make like a big breakdown, like we'll make a video going through all of the details, all of the different websites where you can find information, where you can bridge, where you can do this, where you can do that, all of the trustworthy sites. And I'm still filtering through like how to exactly do all of that. But I wanted to do that and then also follow up with a Twitter thread that I can just like send to people. Like it'll have whoever's videos, like I don't care. It doesn't even have to be my videos. Like if they're just is the most high quality stuff, like having that in a big detailed thread, that's something I am going to be working on. So, if you have some videos that you can already think of in mind that are like your favorite ones for explaining things, feel free to send them over, because I'd be happy to link them and, direct people over to that, because I want to make a thread that does break down a lot of that stuff. And you already have a lot of that content where I wouldn't have to go into quite as much detail with it. So it would just simplify a lot of stuff. And, I just drive more people to your stuff.
For sure. Thanks, man. Yeah, we've got a lot of people too. That's what's weird about this community in a good way, is that we've got so many contributors. We have so many content creators, but we've got people making like hexnoob.com. We had a guy, RH Max. He made a website called gorealdefi.com. Link in description below. That's like your one-stop shop. It just makes it easy to learn everything all from one website, to access all the Hex apps from one website. You can get to PulseX, the Launchpad. You can get to, or not the launch, the Beacon Explorer. You can get to everything from one website, gorealdefi.com. Motley, should I throw a hey, good to see you, Motley. Bro, are you outside? I'm waiting for you, Motley. Motley lives in my hood now. So
really, that's awesome.
Well, I should say I moved into his neck of the woods, but yeah, I'm gonna be the one standing outside your window, Motley, with a freaking boombox over my head.
Are you coming to the PulseChain conference?
I'm going. Are you?
Yeah. I'll be out there. Well, I'll be out there the whole time. I didn't think I was going to be out there from the 7th, but I will. So I probably see everybody there the whole time you'll be out there.
That's going to be awesome. Everybody go if you can. Good networking opportunity. I think it's going to be a good one. Better than last year, because PulseChain actually exists.
Yeah, I bet. That wouldn't be a very fun one. Yeah. Well, see, that's the thing. It's going to be like, I've never been to a conference, so this will be my first crypto conference. Couldn't think of a better community than to do it inside of PulseChain. Super excited. I'm going to talk on the 8th day, so that should be fun. I'm really excited to be able to interact with everybody, connect with you, set up some actual times to be able to have you come on my channel, because I definitely would like to have you come on. I don't ever do streams, and the main reason is because I live so far in like rural mountain land that like I'm always skeptical that it's going to work. I don't ever have issues with like internet, but I've never tried to stream, so I'm always like skeptical. But regardless, whether we do like a pre-recorded, whether you come on my channel, I'd love to have you on, and it'd be a fun time, because I know that you have a lot of value to offer the community.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Everybody go like, subscribe to Donovan. Real asset to the whole community. If you don't know already, DIY investing on YouTube, or I think it's just Donovan Jolly on Twitter.
Yeah, my handle is @Vajalarazzi, which if you can spell that, I should probably change it, but I didn't.
Cool, man. Well, we're happy to have you. Yeah, pulselaunch.xyz. See you on the next one, guys. Make sure you like, subscribe, share the video, leave a comment. You know what to do. See you later.